From the Gulf States Newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm criminal justice reporter Kat Stromquist, chopping it up this week. On today's show, after Katrina, media coverage got a lot of criticism, but smaller local publications helped lift up the city's culture.
Hopelessness can sort of breed a determinative arrogance in terms of, refusing to go away.
And there's a village in New Orleans' 9th Ward that's training the next generation of musical talent while providing affordable housing to many artists.
Kids who don't come from money have some place to come where they can learn. And this center is doing exactly that.
That's all coming up on the Gulf States Gumbo. Media coverage in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina has been criticized for amplifying rumors and spreading misinformation. Journalists in and from New Orleans work to cut through the confusion. And as public health reporter Drew Hawkins reports, smaller local publications also played a role in keeping the city's culture afloat.
This is the story of a small punk rock monthly magazine called Anti-Gravity.
That's that. All right, appreciate y'all.
Dan Fox is Anti-Gravity's publisher/editor-in-chief, and today he's also /distributor, driving around the city delivering the latest issue.
I tell my writers and stuff this all the time, like none of what we do matters until the paper actually hits the stand. So this part of the process is incredibly important.
Anti-Gravity is full of hyper-local stories and artists, everything from interviews and venue schedules to in-depth features, including a voter guide for local elections.
I think if anything, I'm just a punk at heart. And so in that sense, like citizen journalism, street-level journalism, like that's always been something I've been interested in.
When Katrina hit in August 2005 and the levees failed, most of Anti-Gravity's staff lost their homes. But they came back. And in the 20 years since, thousands of local publications across the country have closed. But Anti-Gravity has managed to weather the storms and deliver the stories their readers want. Leo McGovern, Anti-Gravity's founder and editor at the time of Katrina, says that determination embodies the city of New Orleans.
Hopelessness can sort of breed a determinative arrogance in terms of, refusing to go away.
Living up to the magazine's punk rock DIY ethos, McGovern used a handmade press pass to get back into the city after the storm.
I mean, ultimately it worked, so whatever. I didn't feel like we were doing anything wrong. I was covering, the stories.
Anti-Gravity's first issue after Katrina focused on what their readers wanted to know, like updates on the city's artists and music venues, the status of Tipitinas or One-Eyed Jacks, and memorials for venues that weren't coming back. They also published criticisms of national misrepresentations of New Orleans. In the aftermath of the storm, misinformation was a big problem, much of it coming from official sources.
The police chief's walking around with reporters around him talking about the tourists getting raped and the people in the convention center getting raped.
Chris Drew grew up in New Orleans and covered Katrina for the New York Times, writing for a national audience, dispelling rumors about widespread looting and rape, and reporting the reality of people abandoned by officials, stranded for days without food and water.
You're just seeing all this and you're wondering, where's the help and why isn't there any help?
Local journalists worked hard to report information the moment they found out about it. Mark Schlestein worked at the Times-Picayune, the local newspaper.
We're covering everything that's happening in the city, and we're covering it 24/7.
But all of that reporting was missing a key audience. Federal officials weren't looking at reports coming from the ground. The Times-Picayune got a copy of Michael Brown's, the head of FEMA's, emails.
And none of our reporting was showing up in his emails, which was very disconcerting.
The federal government didn't respond for days after the levees broke, not until President George W. Bush was shown a compilation of news reports showing what was actually happening in New Orleans. Dr. Judith Sylvester wrote a book about the media and Hurricane Katrina. She says by that point, national coverage had shifted too.
And it was like, whoa, why is Why is Anderson Cooper almost on the verge of tears here? He's so angry about this.
People, it is desperate here. It is a desperate situation. There's no food. There's no water.
Sylvester says since Katrina, media distrust has gotten worse and national news is more polarized. She blames the loss of local publications.
Because they were the ones who were telling people in their communities. They were trusted, right?
Since 2005, more than 3,200 local publications have shut down. This summer, Anti-Gravity almost became part of that number. But they were there for New Orleans during Katrina. And 20 years later, New Orleans was there for Anti-Gravity. After a plea to readers, Editor-in-Chief Dan Fox says an outpouring of support through new advertisers and subscriptions kept the magazine alive.
So a lot of musicians left New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. There was fear that the city's musical culture could be lost. Then two prominent jazz musicians got together to create a musicians' village to bring them back. Sports and culture reporter Joseph King reports the place is still thriving.
That is 17-year-old Elena Boyd in a recital at the Ellis Marsalis Music Center. The Concert Hall and Music School is the centerpiece of the 72-home neighborhood in New Orleans' Ninth Ward, the neighborhood hardest hit by Hurricane Katrina. Ellen Smith lives here and works at the center.
We've got Mardi Gras, oysters raw.
20 years ago, she lost her home to Hurricane Katrina. At the time, she was singing alongside New Orleans drummer Bob French.
Bob was a mentor to Harry Connick Jr. And when Katrina hit, Harry Connick Jr. came to New Orleans with a news crew and wound up rescuing people off roofs and stuff, and he saw the devastation.
And he teamed up with the first family of New Orleans jazz, the Marsalises.
Him and Branford decided that they needed to do something more.
Harry Connick Jr. and Branford Marsalis partnered with the Habitat for Humanity to build Musicians Village. 2 years after Katrina, Smith moved into her new home. The community became a hub for musicians. In 2012, the Music Center, named after Ellis Marsalis Jr., was added. Besides being a pianist, the patriarch of the talented Marsalis family was an accomplished music educator. Today, the center is teaching the next generation of New Orleans musicians, like in this music class.
I think it's extremely important that kids who don't come from money have some place to come where they can learn. And this center is doing exactly that.
Besides music lessons, children here also get meals, homework help, and counseling. Michael Harris is a bass player in New Orleans. He was homeless after losing everything during Katrina, but now lives in Musicians Village. He says there was a fear that the culture that makes New Orleans what it is will be lost after the hurricane.
It was so much easier for a lot of people to just remain wherever they had relocated to and more or less establish a lifestyle or whatever. This incubator, this hallowed ground, sacred space, is a guarantor that the culture will, and through the music and the arts in general, will survive.
And 20 years after Katrina, New Orleans music culture is not just surviving, but thriving at Musicians Village.
And soon you realize that he will never leave you lonely, always by your side.
During our Katrina coverage, we planned some community engagement events in New Orleans and Biloxi, Mississippi. This is a part of our coverage that was really important to us for the 20th anniversary of the storm. Here to talk about it with me is our community engagement producer, Nellie Beckett. Hey, Nellie.
Hey, Kat.
So I know you played a big part in setting up engagement events for our Katrina coverage. But for our listeners, I'd love it if you could say a little bit more, generally, about what you do.
Sure. I often get asked to explain what does a community engagement producer do. And, well, the week of the Katrina anniversary in the Gulf Coast region provided a sort of week-in-the-life look at my work as a community engagement producer.
Okay, yes. You were definitely all over the place. Where all did you go during that week?
Sure. So I'll walk you through my week day by day. So Monday, I went to a screening by the Kellogg Foundation of a documentary and promoted some of our work there. Tuesday, I went on WLOX, Biloxi's TV news station, to promote our listening session and our newsroom. This was kind of a fun chance to promote our newsroom in a new medium. So that was Tuesday. Wednesday, I was in New Orleans at the Britannia Theater to help produce a panel discussion and screening of the documentary Women of the Storm. It was organized by our development director, Marcy Schramm, and our public health reporter, Drew Hawkins, led a panel discussion with the filmmakers, the subjects, and famed Louisiana political strategist James Carville.
Thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to get it off my chest.
It was a great night of remembrance and storytelling, and GSN was so proud to convene the conversation. Then on Thursday, I led a listening session at the O'Keeffe Museum in Biloxi. And so with a generous grant from the Trust for Civic Life, we brought together former Gulfport Mayor Billy Hughes, community activist and program director Alitra Perryman, and professor and librarian Joyce Shaw for this wide-ranging discussion on the challenges and triumphs of the Gulf Coast in the 2 decades since Hurricane Katrina. A listening session isn't just a panel discussion, though. It's an opportunity for the community to share right back and ask questions.
And you are also my office supply queen, and I hear that you made use of those at one of these events. Tell me about the giant Post-it board.
Visuals can help us organize our thoughts and make feedback visible. So I hung a giant poster up with the prompt, "What stories about coastal Mississippi would you like to see told?" And I put out Post-it notes for folks to share. So this invites broad feedback that can drive editorial coverage and also gives a community a chance for input that they maybe wouldn't email or share verbally. Some of the things people wanted to see covered included economic mobility issues, civil rights history, and even day trips along the coast.
Okay, speaking of some of those big topics, you got a few tough responses from the community about Katrina event planning. Tell me, what were you hearing from folks?
So I heard from some people that they didn't want to attend or participate in our events because of lingering trauma from not only surviving but revisiting the storm. It was a really humbling reminder to be cautious about asking people to relive the most painful time in their lives and not simply parachute in for our newsroom stories. And that's why we're committed to returning to the Mississippi coast to report more stories about the issues that are affecting folks today and going forward.
That's interesting. What do you think you'll take away from it for future community engagement?
I think really listening to and responding to folks about what they'd like to hear, whether that's being mindful of trauma. And it was interesting, too, that folks had so much interest in history, wade-ins on the Biloxi beaches, or the effects of Hurricane Camille, for example. We always want public interest and feedback to drive our coverage.
Speaking of that, too, the Katrina anniversary has passed, but we are always looking for more stories. Where can people reach out to you if they have story ideas?
You can email me at connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org, or you can DM us on Instagram. We're always curious to hear feedback. Thanks, Kat, for giving me a chance to share.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for visiting with me. This week's show is cooked up by the Gulf States Newsroom team. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Again, I'm your host, Kat Stromquist. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to stir your brew.